Hello, WestJet Pilots and other podcast listeners. I'm Captain Desmond Jordan, the chairman of the P2P program, and welcome to this edition of PIREP, the WestJet Pilots podcast. Joined today by Captain Lewall, our MEC chair.
Hi, Des.
And also Captain Chris Tholl, our MEC vice chair. How are you doing, Chris?
Des, I'm doing well. Yourself?
I am also doing well. Thank you for asking. Special shout out today to Captain Chris Von Jones. He's operating the sound booth as he always does, doing an excellent job. Hey, today is a very special day. We are here talking about the conclusion of our negotiations, moving through the agreement in principle and working towards the ratification of our TA. So here we are today in Vancouver. We've just finished our fourth session of the roadshow, and we touched on some pretty important topics. We're going to review some of those with you here today and just bring those who haven't been able to make it out to any of our roadshows up to speed. Bern, how do you think things are going?
I think generally they've been fairly positive, but some really good questions at all of them. We've done two now in Toronto, two in Calgary, and today was the one and only that we had in Vancouver. This one was probably the most engaging, I would say. Chris, would you agree with that?
Yeah, it was, Bernie. Definitely a full room here in Vancouver today. Some people standing in the back as well, and a lot of pointed questions, and certainly some educational answers. There's emotion in the room, but to be fair, with the panel that we brought with us on the road, and for those that haven't attended a roadshow yet, this is a place to get those questions answered correctly.
That's right, Chris, and I'm really happy that this is the one that we actually taped. So it'll be coming out to the pilot group to hopefully educate more of our pilot group.
One thing that I would say, I was really impressed, not only with the number of questions, the type of questions, but the manner in which all of our pilots conducted themselves. Everybody was respectful. Maybe everybody didn't agree, but the manner in which we conducted ourselves and interacted with each other as professionals was really something to be proud of.
That's true, Des. You know, we are a unified pilot group. We all have different ideas, different ideals, but we're a unified pilot group, and it still shows.
Okay, so here we are. We're in the room after the fourth roadshow. Let's get into the meat of this. We have a TA in front of our group to be ratified. What's the value of this TA?
Well, Des, the approximate value increased in new money after sitting on it this week and running the numbers. The total is $465 million, and that's in addition to our first contract. It's a large sum of money. Approximately 78% of that is located in the pay and compensation section.
And Chris, that's a 35% increase over the current value of CA1.
A lot of cash, a lot of money, and a lot of value for the pilots.
Yeah, that is a significant increase over the book. Listen, there are a few hot button issues or topics that we should probably talk about here. Some things that we've been noticing being asked repetitively at the previous roadshows. One of those is the issue of the Retropay, what it is and how it's applied. Can we speak to that?
Sure, Des. You know, the Retropay is any monies that have been earned or any hours that have been earned back to January 1st, 2023. So to go through it precisely is your MMG, any additional straight time you've flown, any overtime, as well as the company contribution of WSP. For the WSP portion of the retro, that is going to be paid as a lump sum. That is not going to be just contributed to your Manulife Mercer funds. That will be back paid to January 1st from your current position, and you can expect that payment on August 15th, 2023.
And I think we have to confirm with our pilot group that you only get that 15.5% on WSP that you have already contributed.
Correct. So if you are not contributing the full amount of WSP, you will only get the WSP equivalent that you've contributed.
There's been some misunderstanding, maybe some confusion about how those rates are going to be applied going forward.
Des, here's a question that I've heard throughout the road shows, and it keeps coming up, and it's about the WSP. So in this TA, we've had some confusion or maybe misunderstanding that we're moving money, we're shifting money to make it look like we're making more money, or at least on our take-home paychecks for that change. So, Bernie, can you talk about what the WSP program looks like now in this TA? And specifically the question, did we capture the value of the 10% we're moving into rates?
We absolutely captured the value of the current WSP. We now have 10% of the WSP is going into a very similar plan as we have right now. The other portion of the WSP that we currently have from the company is going to the pay scales.
Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate, Bernie. You said we're moving 10% to the pay scales, but actually in the road shows and in the presentation, we're showing 9.1%. Can you just confirm for everybody listening that the 9.1 is actually equal to 10% of the WSP that we move? We captured 100% of the value.
We did capture 100% of the value. So 9.1% is going on the pay scales, and we're getting 10% of that still in WSP, which 10% of 9.1 is 0.9.
Okay, perfect. So now on the WSP side, the other questions we're getting are, is the plan exactly the same? We put our funds now in Mercer Manulife funds. There's questions about RSP and non-registered funds. However, let's keep it very simple. The money that we're putting in the current plan, is it the same plan? That would be the first question. Is it the same plan?
No, it will be another plan that we're going to have to re-enroll into sometime probably in August. But otherwise, the funds will be very similar. We'll have an NRSP, we'll have a TFSA, and we'll have an RRSP. The one plan that we won't have is the cash plan.
So we hear a lot of talk about new money, old money, WSP, other money. Let me just see if I can be clear on this for as a layperson pilot, not as close to this process as yourselves are. There's two types of money that's happened here. There's new money, and then there's unlocked money. The unlocked money is money that was ours previously. We've just come up with a different way to pay it to us. It's not new money. That's the money that was in the WSP. And so the new money is the 15.5% now, and then 3%, 3%, and 2.5% over the next 3 years. You know that's significant. I'm going to share an anecdote with you guys. I was flying with an FO who had recently come over from Encore, and he told me that, it was a big deal for him because prior to this, he had not actually been able to afford to partake in the WSP program. So for an individual like that, it's almost like a 45% increase.
Right, Des, and I think that part of this actually goes to display that this contract does have something in it for no matter what your position is in the pilot group. So the other question that we're getting at the road shows is about sick time. Now, we've gone from a system where our sick time consisted of a number of hours. That is now being converted to days. So with the days that we have, we are afforded 12 sick days as per this contract. The question we're getting is, does the 12 days include the new Canada Labour Code personal days, Bernie?
No, it doesn't. So the Canadian personal days are on top of that, 3 paid, 2 unpaid. And I would like to add that the sick days accumulate to a maximum of 22.
Okay, good. So 17 days essentially that you could step away from work. A couple of those are unpaid. However, 15 of them are paid.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Chris.
Okay, good. That is a question that is getting asked at every roadshow.
Yeah, and I think the other thing important to add is that your current time bank, which is up to 120 hours, will get converted to days using the ratio of 5.4. So however many number of hours you have in there, divide that by 5.4, and next year, I think it'll probably be in December, that'll get changed over to a day formula.
Day formula maximum of 22, correct?
Yeah.
Cool. Des, what else you got?
Okay, here's one that comes up quite a bit. It's a big one. It's LTD. Lots of people are asking what happened with LTD and what is this LOLOP program? Can you expand on that?
Okay, let me start with LOLOP, Des. This is something that we put out and we've talked about, that something similar to the Jazz LOLOP. And honestly, I would say it's a bit of an error just using that term. Loss of license offset premium is what that stands for. Essentially, what it does is it takes our cash equivalent payment, which is also known as the previous stock option payout, and we're taking that and we're dividing it, we're putting it into a form that will take care of our long-term disability costs to us on a biweekly basis, and that offset will offset that cost. Unfortunately, people have heard this term and have said, where's the loss of license? I'm flipping through the TA. I don't see it. Apologies. We don't mean to alarm people saying there's a loss of license. This is nothing more than the cash equivalent payment that's been moved over to long-term disability to help offset that cost. Does that make sense, Bern?
It does, and it's not perfect. We had gone to the company and we had offered to switch the entire cash equivalent payment for them to cover the premiums for the LTD. They said, what did they say, Chris?
Well, Bernie, the conversation was interesting. When we asked them to take care of the entire long-term disability payments for the pilots, their response was, well, we want pilots to have skin in the game.
Skin in the game, right?
and for those that aren't seeing the irony here, the pilots have been paying long-term disability out of their own pockets for years. Literally, the company has had zero skin in the game. And they put ourselves in their shoes for a moment with a reply that said, we want pilots to have skin in the game. Des, read between the lines. I don't know what they're saying.
So just to be clear, make sure that I understand this correctly. LTD, the program is staying the same,
Yes.
and the previously aforementioned stock option payout is now divided into 24 equal payments to be put on your paycheck every 2 weeks.
Precisely does, yes. So we are taking that payment, we're putting it on the bi-weekly paycheck, and what that does is it offsets the cost that we are paying out of our own pocket towards long-term disability. I want to emphasize that there is no tax advantage to do it this way. We could have left it as the cash equivalent payment once a year, but the MEC made a decision to aid the take-home pay on the bi-weekly paychecks and use that money to offset the LTD cost.
Another question that's come up, specifically from some of our former Encore pilots, is their seniority or their relative seniority. Is their seniority going to be affected in this agreement?
So their seniority is sacred, and it will be enshrined in Appendix A as of December 6, 2022. It should be out in the next day or two.
So, Bernie, what's Appendix A?
Appendix A is just going to be the seniority list as of December 6th, and there are sections in CA2 that will refer to that.
Okay, so when you say seniority list, that is the master seniority list with all the pilots that, as you mentioned, have been grandfathered in from Encore. Just confirm that.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
All right, Bernie, here's another one that I'm going to throw over to you. Is this a North American standard contract?
It's a good question, and in my mind, we've kind of left the Canadian market right now. We're leading Air Canada in some cases by 20%, and I think that is the tip of the spear that we've been talking about. We're not going to get Delta wages overnight, but we are going to improve the conditions in Canada. So right now, we're leading the Canadian market, and Air Canada, they're coming up to negotiations this fall, most likely. And I'm anticipating Air Canada meet our current wages and leapfrog over that. And I'm really good with that. Because, Chris, I think that'll just bode us well for our next negotiating cycle for CA3.
I sure hope they do. And when they go to negotiate, they're certainly going to be looking at wages such as Delta, Bernie, going forward. And you're right. When it is our next turn to negotiate, those are the wages we're going to be bargaining off of.
Yeah, that's right. That's how we do the pattern-based bargaining. And so I think we've set the Canadian market up really nicely for that.
So, Bernie, some of the feedback that we've been getting from some people is that, they believe that there'd be more money if we had gone on strike. The question that I would have to ask is, was there money left on the table?
The time of optimum pressure on the company is the last 20 minutes before you're going to go out on strike. Des, I would say there was no money left on the table. They came into the room the last minute, and I anticipated we were going on strike at that point. Their final offer, it was somewhat embarrassing to the point where and I'd tell everyone what it was, but I don't want to negotiate in public here. But it was to the point where I just knew we were going on strike, and I told both Alexis and Dietrich that. They left the room for about 10 minutes. They came back in. The offer was significantly higher, and but still it wasn't where we ended up. We had to get it up a little higher than that. So it was kind of emotional last half hour, I got to say, of this agreement. But we did get them to a point where I thought it was something that I could endorse and take to the LEC members.
Okay, so let's take a minute to look at both of the potential sides of this coin. If this TA is successful in being ratified, what would implementation look like for us?
Well, Des, I think we have to rewind a little bit and look where we were 2 or 3 weeks ago with the unity that we built. We got to look at the pickets that we've done. We got to look at the volunteerism that has come from this pilot group, from the grassroots pilot group, to help promote, maintain, and continue the growth within our profession. And so what I would like to see as far as implementation, yes, we have certain timelines. Yes, people are somewhat upset with some of the delays that are included in this TA. There is some things that don't come in for 2.5 years. I understand that. The biggest thing I want to emphasize here is that it is up to the pilots, not just the 100 pilots that helped implement CA1 through the grievance process. It's up to 1,800 pilots this time, taking the unity that we had and moving it forward into CA2 to hold the company accountable and implement this contract to the nth degree. I want to see every pilot filing grievances. We had a lot of pilots, Des, when I was doing grievance work, not file grievances because someone else was taking care of it. I want to emphasize that that's not happening in this contract. Every single pilot, when they have a grievance, needs to file one and hold the company accountable.
Are you saying you want every pilot to follow the contract?
Bernie, I want every pilot to follow the contract, so much so that, spoiler alert, we are getting new lanyards. And guess what they're going to say, Bernie?
Follow the contract?
Exactly. Follow the contract. And when I say follow the contract, I don't mean just the company follow the contract. This is a call out to every pilot to follow the contract. The company made a deal with us this time, and we're going to hold them to the deal that they made. And part of that deal is the pilots have to fly the contract.
Okay, now to the potential other side of this coin. What would happen in the event of a no vote?
That's a great question. Now, first of all, I want to tell our pilot group, read the contract and vote accordingly. If you like the contract, vote for it. If you don't like the contract, vote against it. In the event of a no vote, I think the first thing that would have to happen is I would put my resignation before the MEC. The reason being is because I endorse this agreement along with the negotiating committee. That being said, the MEC would have to convene a special meeting, and we'd have to go forward from there. Will they accept my resignation, or will they allow me to stay on? Either way, it will take a little bit of time to figure that out. Secondly, we'll have to get into a survey. What did we miss that the pilots required? And that will take a month or two. Other than that, I think we all have to recognize that everything that we have worked so hard for up to this point comes into question. We revert back to really not having a contract. Everything has to be renegotiated.
So, Bernie, I guess part of this that comes into play becomes the timeline again. We are no longer in a statutory freeze if this does not pass. We turn into a position where we can issue a 72-hour strike notice, or the company can lock us out. And we still have timeline for that.
That's true, Chris. We could reinstitute the 72-hour strike notice up until June 16th. I think the issue with that, though, is our mandate failed with the pilot group. So before we can actually go on strike, we need to know what the pilots want.
Right, and that goes back to surveying the pilots, Bernie, and we need to know what the pilots want if this gets voted down. Personally, Bernie, I'm with you. I endorse this deal. I think this is the best deal we could have gotten. I don't think we left a penny on the table. In fact, what I'd like to say is, to reference the old JPA, how they used to have a pie and it was only so big, we made Onyx go bake more pie that night.
That pie grew. It grew exponentially to where it started.
It did. So while I wish the hourly rates could have been higher, while I wish we could have got things like 100% deadheads, people have to understand that there's a lot of things the company wanted that they did not get, that they got stonewalled on as well. And that is simply part of negotiations.
And what I'm happy about, Chris, is we have created a solid foundation for CA3 3 years from now.
Is it true that 80% of the passes that we put across the table we were successful in gaining?
That is true, Des. And another thing that actually came up during the negotiations, it was said that the Conciliators, specifically, had never seen an organization, labor, change the way a company fundamentally conducts business. And I think that's exactly what we've done with this contract. We've changed the way we've clawed back a lot of control that the company has always enjoyed. And we all know how WestJet loves its control, Bernie.
Yeah, we do. And you know what? That was a huge kudos from the Conciliators towards our negotiating team, I got to say.
And they did a fantastic job. The entire negotiations committee, every single committee, and especially you look at the people that were running strike centers. I know they were kind of deflated when we said we got an AIP because they had worked so hard to get to that point. But every pilot here should understand that the only way we were able to achieve what we did was because we had that backstop, because the company at the last minute realized this pilot group is serious. They are going to make us pay. And so they therefore started pricing out what a strike would cost versus some of our asks in the final hour.
And that's a huge shout out that we need to give to the strike committee. You know, they made sure that we were ready.
And we were ready. And we are ready.
And Des, you know what? Even for the next contract, these pilots have seen what Unity does. They've seen what it actually feels like to come together in the last minute of a contract and know that we're united on several issues that are key to this pilot group. So as we go into CA3, they're going to expect the same. And what we've done so far to CA2 is only a building block, not only by the contract, but by the strike committee and by this unity in this pilot group, Des.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here today on PIREP. We'll take this opportunity now to wrap things up and say to the pilots in our group, please take the time to read the contract that's out there now. Please use the DART system to get information if you need it. Use the pilot-to-pilot system to get information if you need it. Get yourself educated, get yourself informed, and then make the decision that is right for you. And thanks for tuning into this edition of PIREP.